The 2026 Formula One season is facing a potential scandal that could determine the championship winner before the cars even hit the track. Mercedes and Red Bull appear to have discovered a way around the new engine rules that might give them an enormous performance edge. Ferrari, Honda and Audi are not happy about this situation and want the FIA to take action. The FIA now has to make a very tough decision that could either anger Mercedes or create an unfair season for everyone else. Let's break down what's going on. The issue centres on something called compression ratio. When the FIA wrote the 2026 rules, they decided to reduce the maximum compression ratio from 18:1 down to 16:1. To explain this simply, compression ratio measures how much the fuel air mix gets compressed inside the engine cylinder before it burns. Higher compression typically delivers more power and efficiency. The old 18:1 limit was seen as too difficult for newcomers to achieve. The FIA made this change to help new teams like Audi join the sport without facing an impossible technical challenge right from the start. The real issue is not the rule, but how it gets checked. The rules say the FIA must check the compression ratio when the engine is sitting cold in the garage. They measure the cylinder volume at the piston's lowest and highest points to work out the ratio. But this measurement cannot happen when the engine is screaming at 15,000 RPM with extreme heat. This is where Mercedes and Red Bull have been smart. They built their engines to take advantage of how metal expands when it heats up. As the engine reaches race temperature, the components expand in a carefully controlled way that shrinks the combustion chamber and pushes the compression ratio higher. Reports suggest they can get back to 18:1 or beyond when running at full speed. Technical expert Gary Anderson pointed out that with an 80mm piston, just 0.5mm of thermal movement would be enough to go from 16:1 to 18:1. That might not sound like much, but with the strict material restrictions in the engine rules, achieving this controlled expansion is extremely complex engineering. Mercedes and Red Bull say they are playing by the rules. The regulations clearly state the check happens at room temperature. If their engines pass the cold test at 16:1, they argue everything is legal. They say this is not bending the rules, but clever engineering within the rules. Why does this matter so much? The performance benefit could be massive. Paddock insiders are talking about gains of up to 0.4 seconds per lap. In Formula One, that kind of advantage is huge. If these numbers are accurate, teams without this technology have zero chance of winning in 2026. The championship would be decided before it begins. The engine homologation rules make this worse. Once the season starts, the engine designs are locked in. Unlike aerodynamic parts that teams can copy in weeks, redesigning an engine to use this thermal trick would need months of work and probably could not happen until 2027. The complexity of getting the thermal expansion exactly right, combined with the material restrictions in the rules, means this is not something that can be rushed. The story gets more interesting because Red Bull is also trying this, but they seem to be struggling. Italian media reports say Red Bull Powertrains has spent the last 7 months attempting to copy what Mercedes is doing after hiring a Mercedes engineer who knew the details. This engineer apparently shared the secret of how Mercedes achieved this thermal expansion trick, but Mercedes has been developing this for over a year and is way ahead. The reports say Red Bull still cannot match what Mercedes has achieved. This means Mercedes and their customers, McLaren, Williams and Alpine, might dominate not just Red Bull but everyone else too. That would mean 8 cars on the grid with a significant power advantage over the other 12. The FIA is stuck between 2 terrible choices. If they ban this system, they punish Mercedes for building their whole 2026 engine around this idea. Mercedes would have to redesign major parts of their engine, which might not even be possible before the season starts. That would be a disaster for Mercedes and their customer teams. But if they allow it, the 2026 season could be boring with one team way ahead of everyone else. It would also trigger protests from Ferrari, Honda and Audi at the opening race in Australia, creating chaos. The teams have weekly meetings to try to solve these kinds of problems, but the concern is growing that 8 Mercedes-powered cars will have a major advantage that cannot be stopped. The latest news suggests the FIA is looking for a middle ground. The idea being discussed is to let Mercedes use this system for 2026 only, but they must agree to stop using it in 2027. This would give the other engine makers time to develop their own version. But the other teams are already pushing back hard against this idea because they do not want to give up an entire season. At the same time, the FIA has already acted on another related problem. They closed a different loophole involving the fuel flow meter. For 2026, the rules switch from measuring fuel mass to measuring energy. The old system had teams and the FIA each running their own fuel flow meters. The new system uses a single standardized meter supplied by Allengra, with the same data going to both the FIA and the teams. The FIA worried teams might try to mess with the fuel flow meter's temperature to fool the sensor and use more energy than allowed. The original rule banned intentional temperature changes, which left room for creative interpretation. The FIA rewrote this to ban any device, system, or method that changes the meter's temperature. This closes not just obvious tricks, but subtle ones too. This sends a clear signal that the FIA will not accept tricks with measurement equipment. Nicholas Tombazis, who leads single-seater technical matters at the FIA, gave a strong warning that any team caught cheating with the rules would face such severe punishment it would be career-ending. What comes next? Ferrari, Honda and Audi are running out of time. They cannot change their engine designs before 2026 starts. The engines are currently being manufactured and built for Race 1. While official homologation does not happen until March 1st, the reality is that it is already too late to make fundamental changes. The question is whether they can introduce an overhauled engine for the second half of 2026, or if it will take until 2027 to properly implement this technology. There is also another viewpoint worth considering. Some people think this whole compression ratio controversy is being blown out of proportion. They argue that everything is theoretical right now. Nobody knows for sure exactly how much benefit Mercedes and Red Bull have gained. No engines have actually raced against each other yet. There is no guarantee that any power gains will be critical to success on track. They point out that there is plenty of scope in the regulations for other manufacturers to catch up, even within 2026, and potentially even leapfrog Mercedes and Red Bull. The truth is likely somewhere in the middle between these different viewpoints. But the issue will definitely dominate all the talk leading up to 2026. It's a battle of politics and technology, with the FIA caught in the crossfire. Whatever they decide will shape the sport's future. Will they follow the exact wording of the rules and allow the trick, even if it ruins the 2026 racing? Or will they step in and risk a major fight with Mercedes? Either way, the 2026 season is already looking like it will be one of the most controversial we have seen in years.